Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott, and I can't wait to read this amazing teaching from Robert B. Stone and Jose Silva. This is in particular on how to use Silva Mind Control for a successful day. We've read a bunch of Robert B. Stone on the podcast, and we have an episode where I cover the Silva Mind Control technique as he taught it jointly with Robert B. Stone. And I'm reading from an amazing book, The Silva Mind Control Method for Business Managers. If you don't know, Jose Silva was one of the world's greatest success stories, one of the true pioneers of mental training. He started his research in 1944, and after 22 years of research, he developed his widely acclaimed Silva Mind method. He established an electronics training school in his hometown and designed and received patents for several biofeedback instruments, and wrote over a dozen books, and in particular, through a scientific method, found a way of changing and altering the mind into an alpha state very easily, and develop techniques that can be used to raise your consciousness and achieve success. He taught unique ways of visualization and is one of the great authors of all time when it comes to consciousness and reality creation. Robert B. Stone was an internationally known author, teacher, and expert in achievement of the human potential. And he was the author and co-author of over 80 published books, most notably on self-help and powers of the mind. I have had the honor of meeting his son, Dennis Stone, who is an amazing person, and it's wonderful to have permission to read from these chapters because they carry amazing information that we can use today to achieve success and take us to the next level in our manifestations. Silva Mind Control for a successful day. Visualization and imagination lead to clairvoyance. Previously, you began the practice of visualization, and also you have begun the practice of imagination. What is the difference? With visualization, we draw on memory. We recall scenes from the past. With imagination, we create scenes for the first time. The process of imagination opens mental channels for ingenuity, inspiration, and creativity. It took you 50 days of morning practice to get to alpha level under your control. Additional days have been spent practicing visualization as a prerequisite for imagination. We have found a large variance in the number of practice sessions required by individuals to acquire satisfactory visualizing skills. It depends on how you've been using your mind in the past. So we will not stipulate a definite number of morning practice sessions for visualization. When you feel that you're able to remember past events and see them as mental movies, you're ready to create new events and see them as mental movies. Practice sessions now become more than practice sessions. Practice sessions now become creative. You've introduced pictures of yourself, improved in some way, in visualization practice sessions. These too are creative. These images of new circumstances, unless you were equally successful in the past and were merely recalling that success. The reaching of a goal not reached before is a new image. So to the extent that you have been using new pictures instead of memories, you've already begun to practice the use of imagination. We're going to continue that practice now, but we're going to use mental movies that bear more on the present than on the future. We're going to use our imagination to create a perfect today. You'll be able to see the results of your practice day by day as the days get better and better. New movies have grand openings. Yours will too. An ingredient that means business. MS, head of a Texas tool company, insisted that his key personnel take the Silva Mind Method training course on a shared cost basis. He also made the training a requirement for employment of new job applicants. All key sales personnel were included. Soon, half of his staff were Silva graduates. There was resistance along the way. One man who was getting nowhere in his job said, "You're wasting your money. I can't sit for a whole day." MS pulled no punches. "Take the training or I'll be disappointed in you." The man knew what MS meant and agreed. He went from being totally negative to being totally positive before the training was half over, says MS. Shortly after, he used the Silva method and landed a contract for us with the military to repair a base. Overall, MS estimates that his company's sales increased manifold, with the recalcitrant graduate increasing his sales 100-fold within 2 months. Can you identify the element responsible for this sales promotion? It was not a new technical brochure, a new sales pitch, increased advertising, media publicity, or a direct mail campaign. Yet, in a way, it was all of these. Sales promotion involves communicating motivational information to the potential buyer. The Silva method does exactly that, but it uses a different channel of communication than these standard sales promotion methods. It uses subjective communication, a new medium of communication. Subjective communication requires the use of imagination. As you practice the use of the imagination, and I will now give ways to do that, mental movies involving your relations with other people get through to those people. If your left brain is saying, "Hold it a minute," I'm not surprised. You've never been taught that the imagination has anything at all to do with reality, much less that it creates it. It is just your imagination. You heard this at a young age repeatedly. Mental movies at the alpha level are a real method of communicating. It is not just your imagination. You may have read the work of Cleve Baxter, who, with the aid of the polygraph, has been able to demonstrate repeatedly that this subjective communication is also going on between plants and humans, and between even single-celled organisms. If your left brain demands a scientific explanation, it is going to have to wait. Science has taken many years to accept the fact that supernormal powers of the mind exist. Now that they recognize what we can do, it is going to take even more years to explain what is happening. We talk about our logical, intellectual, and reasoning abilities as the result of using our gray matter. Now, a University of Pennsylvania team of psychologists has found anatomical differences in the two halves of our brain. The left brain, the analytical, has more gray matter. The right brain, intuitive, has more white matter. Gray matter consists primarily of junctions and connections between brain cells. White matter consists mostly of nerve fibers like wires. The psychologists have concluded that left brain functioning needs more signal processing within tiny regions. Right brain functioning needs less processing, with signals carried over larger brain distances. That's the beginning. Between the time of writing this and you reading this, there will undoubtedly be more findings toward an explanation of the right brain's ability to communicate subjectively. When you use subjective communication and experience the undeniable results, you begin to care less about logical explanations and more about practical uses in your business. Successful use breeds more success. An insurance executive took the Silva Method training course for the sole purpose of increasing his sales. Soon after completing it, he phoned us in Laredo, Texas, to relate the following situation. He had approached a wealthy businessman in his community in order to sell him an education policy for his 2 teenage children. The businessman seemed receptive. Price was no problem. Somehow the insurance man was not able to get the information across sufficiently well to clinch the sale. He began to apply the usual sales pressure, visiting the businessman a number of times until it got to the point where the secretary would lie and say her boss was not in. The reason he phoned us was to get advice on how to apply his training to this specific situation. We told him how. The method appears later, and he used it. The next day, here is what he reported back to us. He visited the businessman's office. The secretary's usual dour look was replaced by a smile. "He is in," she said pleasantly. She got up and went to open the door to the private office. Just then it was opened from the inside by the businessman. Come in, he said. "I was thinking about you." When they were seated, he continued, "Your policy is priced right. Coverage is fine. Let's fill out the forms right now." The insurance man pulled out the forms, asked the key questions, and in a few minutes the forms were completed and signed. "Would you like to pay in installments?" asked the insurance man. "No, I'll pay for it now." He wrote out a check in full. Reporting this to us later, the insurance man said, "In less than 10 minutes, I was driving home in my car, stunned with a check in my pocket for $43,000. Needless to say, this success triggered more use of subjective communications by the agent and more successes. He was a graduate. You are still a trainee. As you train, though, you too can experience success. You must crawl before you walk, before you run. So your practice sessions will begin with simple creative uses of the imagination. And then get to the method used by the insurance man. Small successes come first. Large successes come later. Harnessing creative imagination. I would now like to go over the steps to practice the use of imagination in order that I might make some further observations to assist you with each. Here are the steps. Step 1. On awaking, go to your alpha level by counting backwards from 5 to 1 and turning your eyes slightly upward, about 20 degrees above the normal plane of sight. Step 2. Visualize according to previous instructions, recalling scenes from memory and seeing them out and away from your body. Step 3. Now imagine other scenes. Imagination uses new scenes not yet experienced. Premiere a new mental movie, something that has not happened yet, but that you would like to happen. Step 4. Make some positive statements or affirmations. Step 5. Count yourself up from 1 to 5, feeling wide awake, better than before. Perfecting the steps. Let us look at these steps again. Step 1 still presumes that you are in the practicing stage. That means you do it on awakening. This restriction can be eased as you progress. You can go to your alpha level after lunch or in the evening before retiring. These are the best 2 times during the day. After you're satisfied with the results, you are then free to pick any time of day, dealer's choice. Step 2 in your current practicing asks that you begin with memory scenes. This is visualization. We ask that you start imagination practice sessions with visualization so that you can identify one from the other. Visualization reinforces present or past conditions or events by giving energy to these remembered scenes. So select success scenes to remember, thus reinforcing that success now. Step 3 creates a shift from remembered scenes to desired scenes that have not yet taken place. This is dynamic meditation in its most creative form. These imagined scenes program you and other people too if they are in the picture. Step 4's positive statements act as commands to your computer. You behave according to these commands. To make this a better day for you at the plant or office, create appropriate ones that apply. Here are some suggested statements. I remain energetic and enthusiastic all day. I am more and more patient, understanding, and compassionate of others. I have abundant creative ideas. I maintain my calm and wisdom in all situations. I maintain a healthy body and mind. If you try to remember too much to do at the alpha level, you drift up to beta. So adopt 1 or 2 statements to begin with. Later you can add to them or change them. Step 5 is often slurred over by graduates, and then they wonder why they still feel sleepy later. There are 3 times that the statement or command is given to be wide awake, feeling better than before you start the count up. When you reach the count of 3, then you open your eyes at the count of 5. Make the statement all 3 times. An important correction. Another area where graduates often miss is in step 2, visualizing out and away from your body. If you're making the common mistake of visualizing on the inside of your eyelids, you are really using biological vision. This brings you up to 20 cycles where biological vision takes place. You do not want to be at beta. You want to be at alpha, 10 cycles where clairvoyance takes place. Side note, alpha is a key part of the Silva Mind method, and the key element is simply moving your eyes slightly upward at 15 to 20 degrees above the normal plane of sight and counting backwards from 5 to 1. It's that simple. Here is an exercise to correct this. Practice with your eyes open in a sitting position. Look straight ahead in a staring or gazing manner with your eyes not focused directly on anything in particular. By looking in this unfocused manner, the pupils tend to dilate. Now, turn the eyes slightly upward, still open, and still unfocused at an angle of about 20 degrees above the horizon, thus producing more alpha and helping you to hold on to that dimension. Now turn your eyes to the left as far as they will go without forcing them. They are still open. They are still gazing in an unfocused way. They are still turned slightly upward. Now practice visualization in this position, remembering people, places, or things that you have seen in the past and describing them mentally to yourself in full detail and color. This visualizing with eyes open but not focused disconnects the biological eyes from the visualizing process and so corrects the error of visualizing with the eyes. By looking to the left to do this, you involve the right brain more. You become more aware of an inner way of perceiving. This develops a new feeling with practice, a feeling of visualizing away from your body. This is an important feeling. Be aware of it. By recalling this feeling later, when you use visualization or imagination, you will automatically function with your intuitive right brain at alpha. Once you practice visualization with your eyes open and in this position, begin practicing the use of the imagination. Switch from one to the other, using imagination for clairvoyance now. When you switched from remembering past events and picturing them to creating new events and picturing them, you changed from visualization to imagination. Now you're going to use imagination in a way that will enhance clairvoyance. Here is how. Go to your alpha level in the usual way. Once again, that is rolling your eyes up at a 15 to 20 degree angle and then counting backwards from 5 to 1. Now select a person whose name you've heard in your business but whom you have not yet seen. Describe that person to yourself. Do the best you know how. Say whatever comes to your mind. The color of hair, how tall, fat or thin, anything that pops into your thoughts as you imagine you see this person. This method of practicing imagination leads to clairvoyance. You can use your neighbor's pets if you have not seen them, or you can imagine a co-worker's house, one you have never seen. In describing things that you have never seen, you are enlisting the use of imagination. Instead of you're making pictures with memory, you're making pictures with imagination. When you mentally ask the question, what does that person look like? Or what does that house look like? You are triggering more of the mind to go to work for you, the right hemisphere. You are developing a feeling of clairvoyance. Later, by recalling that feeling, you will be at the right level to use your imagination for clairvoyance again. Accuracy comes with practice. Do not be concerned about initial results. You will get curious results. Be patient as you practice. Then later you can check on your accuracy by checking your mental picture against the actual person or house. You will develop a feeling of an ideal level of thinking for clairvoyance. By remembering when you were accurate and how you felt being accurate, you will attain that ideal level for accurate clairvoyance again. Once you are beginning to sense that feeling, you can then practice this method in your office. If you have an appointment with somebody you've never seen, such as a salesman or job applicant, go to your alpha level beforehand. Imagine what the person looks like. When the person arrives, note your hits. You will find that as you practice this, you will get better and better. Initial accuracy averages 25%. With practice, this increases to 50%. Eventually, you can attain a percentage of accuracy that exceeds 80%. Sometime after the person has left, use the occasion to practice visualization. Go to your alpha level and recall the person. Hat, eyeglasses, facial hair, shape of nose, mouth, ears, eyebrows, color of hair, eyes, skin, body size, color of suit, tie, shirt, belt, shoes, possibly socks. By so doing, you'll be enhancing your visualization factor. As you improve your visualization factor, you will also be improving your imagination factor. Be sure to keep the person in mind as you recall details for both visualization and imagination. We have not yet reached the point where we can use imagination for practical clairvoyant benefits, but we are at the doorstep. Distant viewing. For several years, a project entitled Distant Viewing was conducted by SRI in California. Dr. Harold Putoff and his colleagues asked volunteers to participate in the following way. After they were made comfortable in homey surroundings at the Institute, each volunteer was given a pad and pen and asked to sketch where a co-worker in New York was at the moment. Caught by surprise, but wanting to fulfill their obligations, the volunteers sketched whatever came to mind. Each sketch was dated and the time marked on it. Meanwhile, the co-worker in New York was taking Polaroid pictures of where he was standing. These pictures were also marked with time and date. The pictures and sketches were then submitted to a committee, the members of which were selected for their objectivity, a lack of bias for or against the project. The committee then established whether each sketch was a hit or miss. Would you care to guess the percentage of sketches that contained hits? I'm sure that your guess today is higher than your guess would have been before you started reading this book and practicing. There are two reasons for this. Your belief system has been somewhat altered, and your guessing ability has improved to the extent you have practiced up to this point. At any rate, the SRI success factor is 80%. This does not mean that volunteers were 80% accurate, but that 80% of the volunteers had some accuracy. Everybody has a right brain hemisphere. Using alpha for a successful meeting. To make today a better day for you, your work at the alpha level can now include more than goal-reaching programming, more than energy and enthusiasm affirmations, and more than efficient productivity pictures. You can now begin making this a better day by programming for specific encounters with certain persons to come off successfully. Here's how the clairvoyant executive can prepare for a meeting with an important person for a substantial transaction. When you practice all of the exercises which you've been given so far, including using your imagination to describe a person or place you have not yet seen but are about to see, you are then ready to go to your level in a new way for an important matter. 1. Instead of counting from 5 to 1, count from 3 to 1, then count again from 10 to 1 to indicate you are about to work on a matter of special importance. Do this at night before going to sleep. 2. Select a person of the same sex as you who you know has done well in such transactions, similar to the one facing you on the following day. This person can be dead or alive. Visualize this expert by your side. If you do not know this expert, imagine him or her by your side. 3. Then program yourself. That is, say to yourself mentally that you will awaken during the night or in the early morning automatically when the important person you are to meet the next day, and identify that person by name, is at his or her ideal level to mentally discuss the project. 4. When you wake up automatically during the night or early morning, go to your level again by the 3 to 1, 10 to 1 procedure. 5. Visualize or imagine the expert you have selected. He or she will act as a consultant. See that expert by your side. 6. Next, visualize or imagine, depending on whether you are acquainted or not, the important person you are to deal with, and use the 3-scene procedure. A. First scene. The important person is directly in front of you. You are greeting and welcoming that person. B. Second scene. Shift your awareness slightly to your left. Now talk mentally with the important person. Present your concepts and your ideas, your reasons for meeting with the person, just as you might be talking with this person in your office later. You should consult with the expert by your side if you are in doubt as to what points to cover. Ask, and ideas will come to you. Present these to the important person mentally. See the important person reacting favorably and positively to your presentation. He or she is receptive and understands the point you are covering and accepts the proposal. C. Third scene. Shift your awareness further to your left. Now imagine the desired transaction completed and the end results already taking place as though the meeting is in the past. 7. Do not count yourself up feeling wide awake. Instead, permit yourself to fall asleep from your alpha level. 8. The next day, either in your morning practice or at the office, go through the same procedure again. 9. When the important person arrives, imagine that the expert is sitting at your side. Should a question arise that gives you pause, use the pause to mentally ask the expert. Why it works. Let us go over these steps again to better understand the purpose of each and to provide additional details that contribute to effectiveness. 1. The 5-to-1 method for going to your alpha level should be retained for routine programming. The 3-to-1, 10-to-1 method should be used for special projects of importance. 2. The right hemisphere is our connection to the non-physical, spiritual, or causal plane. This is the realm of higher intelligence. The expert is symbolic of this greater intelligence to which we have access. By utilizing such a concept, insight, intuition, clairvoyance is reinforced. 3. The important person may be a late TV watcher or a drinker. He is more closed to subjective communication than if he is asleep. There are times during sleep when his mind is more open to your mental message. Your mind will detect this and awaken you when so instructed. 4. Again, this is a special project of importance. Use the special countdown. 5. The expert replies to your questions as to what points might be made under 6b. The points need to be carefully weighed because they must be mutually advantageous in nature. A transaction that benefits you and your company but causes a problem for the other person's company cannot be programmed to take place. The transaction must be of advantage to both parties. Your expert can be of help in this regard. Only that which is fair and correct will work. 6. Moving the scene from right to left has been found by years of research to add effectiveness. No hard scientific explanation is available, but we do have a few clues. Hypnotized subjects regressed to the past lean to the right. My children in initial research turned from right to left as they worked out a present problem and turned it into a forthcoming solution. The right brain controls the left side of the body. Keep in mind as you work on problems that the past situations or problems should be visualized to the right. The present changes straight ahead, and the future with no problem to the left. 7. There is no need to count yourself up unless you wish to be wide awake for beta activities. Actually, you wish to go in the opposite direction to sleep at theta and delta. 8. Repetition prior to the meeting reinforces the night's programming. 9. During the meeting, the imagining of the expert present provides a connection to higher intelligence. Principles of subjective communication. Perhaps you have been wondering just how close we are getting to religion when we enhance clairvoyance. Actually, the no man's land, which traditionally separates science and religion, is gradually being eroded. As science gets to the material frontiers within the atom, it has words that can come close to describing a causal energy or intelligence. As religions modernize, they use words that come closer to science's concepts than to classical religion. See Thomas Sicking, who has taught leadership and motivational classes at Olympic College in Bremerton, Washington, conducted a seminar entitled Creative Responsibility, which is also the title of a book he has written. Mr. Sicking has a broad background in business and law. He's also the senior minister at Portland Unity Church in Portland, Oregon. He's able to stand with one foot in the religious world and one foot in the material world comfortably. This is because creative responsibility does not get immersed in religion. It does assume, however, that there is a creative force inner behind the universe outer, and that there is a meeting ground between our inner and outer realities. The Silva method brings us to this meeting ground. It thrives on unity, not separation. At the alpha level, your imagination functions in superhuman ways because your right brain is your connection to a superintelligence. Break this connection and you are back to square one. There are 2 easy ways to break the connection. 1. Do anything that moves you from alpha to beta. 2. Communicate anything that creates a separation. So the 2 main principles behind successful subjective communication are 1. Communicate at alpha, and 2. Communicate as if you and the recipient were one. Removing the illusion of separation. Fact. You are part of an intelligence continuum that permeates the universe. Fact. If you feel out of it, separated, you know who moved. You connect with this continuum when you use your imagination at the alpha level. You connect even better with the correct frame of mind. The correct frame of mind is one of teamwork, with all mankind on the same team. Our competitive society cultivates one-upmanship. There's often a dog-eat-dog attitude in intra-company jealousies and in competition between companies. When using subjective communication, this attitude breaks off the connection. A more cooperative and compassionate attitude becomes more successful. A sales manager is using subjective communication to encourage a more positive attitude on the part of a recently employed salesman. He is alone in his office. He has used the 3-to-1, 10-to-1 method to go to alpha. If he says, "You moron, one more bad week and I'll give you a good reason to feel negative," the connection has been broken. On the other hand, if he says mentally, "The world is what we make it. Be enthusiastic," your sales will increase and give you something to be enthusiastic about. The message will get through. When using subjective communication, avoid polarity. Avoid statements that put down, that criticize, that sets you or your company apart. Communicate what is right rather than who is right. Distance does not matter. The message gets through. It gets through below the conscious level. A typical subjective communication by the clairvoyant executive to a potential client or customer might express the following points: the advantages of the product or service, the advantages of dealing with his firm, his personal concern for the welfare of the client or customer, other short-term benefits, other long-term benefits. A typical subjective communication would also be truthful, be fair. Inequality breaks the connection. Be above board. Trickery boomerangs. Be mutually respectful. Foster a meeting of the minds. Be creative. You're using the creative realm. The key is to overcome the illusion of separateness induced by salesman, customer, and other such business polarities. During the first few years of life, we use both left and right hemispheres equally. In those early years, we learn about 25 times more per day than in later years, when the left brain becomes more dominant. The old adage, "Be as a child," is now revealed by scientific research to have practical dollars and cents value. Opportunities for subjective communication. You've just begun a new phase of your own personal development. You have a key that unlocks the potential of your mind. You've graduated to a new level of effectiveness as you begin to employ inner powers that can shape the future, powers that work for you night and day. You begun to activate the right brain to work in harmony with your left brain. Your reason and logic are now supplemented with intuition and clairvoyance. Together they can reach out and create personal progress, business progress, world progress. You are programming for this progress with the Silva method. Its applications in daily business life are as comprehensive as that business life is itself. Let us first review 3 separate programming approaches that are available to you with the Silva method as presented so far in these pages. 1. Alpha affirmations. 2. The 3 fingers technique programmed initially at alpha but used mostly at beta. Side note, the 3 fingers technique is essentially an anchor that you program with yourself. You may have something that you need, and then you utilize this programming using the 3 fingers of either hand. You say mentally, "Whenever I encounter this type of problem in the future, all I need to do is to bring together the tips of the first 3 fingers of either hand. By doing so, I will turn on faculties. I will be extra sensitive in perceiving information that I can use immediately to solve the problem." By doing this, you can create states immediately that allow for higher level or effective reasoning and mental ability. 3. Important event programming using expert, optimum time, and the 3-scene procedure at alpha. Now, in this particular technique, you go to the alpha level and you tell yourself that to correct this problem, the next time the problem is apparent, all you have to do is put your 3 fingers together, you unfocus your eyes, and you see 3 pictures. In the first picture, for instance, you might see a problem worker that's lax on the job. In the second picture, slightly to the left, the problem worker is drinking his favorite fluid and is being reminded of the need to step up his work effectiveness. In the third picture, the problem worker is no longer a problem. He is working at the top performance. With this method, once pre-programmed at alpha at night, there's no need to go to level during the day. The act of putting together the tips of the fingers, unfocusing the eyes, and daydreaming the 3 scenes will activate your right brain, and you'll function with your objective and subjective faculties that will help you to solve problems. Essentially, you use this as a problem-solving technique, with the left picture that you see with your imagination being the problem, the middle picture being the action that you take to solve it, and the third picture being the problem solved. Alpha affirmations can be made any time of the day or night to strengthen your resolve, well-being, energy, skill, understanding, motivation, optimism, enthusiasm, and even success with the Silva method. The applications of simple visualization and imagination programming techniques at the alpha level range from personal betterment on the job to a more fulfilling and productive day for the company. The three fingers technique can be used to increase your intelligence whenever needed. Reading technical papers, attending meetings, ending indecision, being in the right place at the right time. Essentially, you're using the three fingers as an anchor for a peak mental state. The important event programming for which the procedure has been spelled out can be used in advance of meetings where a critical decision on the part of another person will be made. Some examples might be 1. A job interview, 2. A major sales event, 3. Labor management matter, 4. Court proceeding, 5. Proposal presentation, 6. Problem with subordinate, 7. Problem with government representative. The human mind at work. As we proceed, additional Silva method techniques will be provided, and we will delve deeper into their applications for specific situations. It will be impossible to cover all possible situations, but you will be able to adapt these applications more flexibly as you see multiple uses. In the Silva method training, we repeat the programming that the alpha level can be used for benefits, any benefit that you desire, and this is so. The human mind at work in the world manipulates matter until it forms civilizations. Living patterns are modified and refined. Changes occur at the individual level and at the world level. The mind that resists change ceases to have ideas of its own, ceases to think constructively. The mind that resonates with change grows, expands, and survives in the evolving world. Now, this is a very important discussion, and while the focus of this book is on Silva Mind Control method for business managers, as you can tell in reading this chapter, the focus is on utilizing this in the office and in business. The actual teaching goes far beyond that. It is important to understand the distinction between visualization and imagination. There's some important things that are taught here, and utilizing the process of visualizing, meaning in terms of Silva Mind Control, visualizing is something remembering the past and experiencing that past memory in detail, and then imagining. You start to see the difference between these two. A lot of times people do not differentiate between past memories and visualization, and this process allows you to differentiate that and ups your game when it comes to imagination. Silva and Stone are saying here that imagination creates reality, but they're emphasizing that when you imagine in the alpha state, it is much more effective. They give us a very easy way to go into alpha. The movement of the eyes at a 20-degree angle upwards can put us into an alpha state simply for 5 seconds. When I originally learned this technique, it was a little bit longer of a period of time, and if you have ways to measure your brainwave state, then you should try that. You'll see that this does work. But when you imagine from the alpha state, which is a little better than theta and delta according to Silva, because your mind is still awake, you're able to imagine properly. There's some great techniques that are used here, and there's a very extensive discussion of subjective communication. This is the number one way that you can communicate mentally with other people, telepathically. The idea that you program yourself to connect with somebody when their mind is attuned at the right level. This often means that you'll wake up in the middle of the night, and then you'll know, I need to communicate with this person, and then you utilize this technique. Now, it's important to note that Silva found when you try to do negative things with subjective communication, it always comes back to you and it doesn't work. So if you try to send evil thoughts or manipulate people, it never works. But if you try to say positive things and help people out and make the situation positive, it always works. There's a natural protection that's built in psychically when you do this process. There's some amazing techniques here, and you should definitely be experimenting with going into alpha, utilizing subjective communication, and anchoring with the three-finger technique. I'd love to know your feelings on Silva, and if you've utilized the Silva Mind Control method, please relay your own experiences about this amazing technique, and I'll be sure to share more in the future. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com, and welcome to The Reality Revolution.